Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Sunday Wire. I'm your host, Patrick Henningsen. We're streaming out live on the Alternate Current Radio Network and also at 21stCenturyWire.com. Thank you for rejoining us, and what a fantastic live segment we just had with Dr. Lisa Johnson, the clinical psychologist from Sydney, Australia, talking about the health of Julian Assange. He is very much in jeopardy as we speak. It's a very serious issue. Now, our next guest is on the ground right now in South America. He's a writer. He is an author, a best-selling author of note. There's a link to some of his books on our show page right now. His name is Andre Vltchek, and he is on the live link from Santiago, Chile. Hello, Andre.
Hello, Patrick. Nice to be back.
Great to have you back, and it's only been a week, Andre, and we really need another update because we see what's happening in Chile right now, but obviously the field has expanded a bit in South America with major mass unrest in Colombia, of all places. I didn't see that coming. I wanted to get your take on what's happening in Colombia and the geopolitical implications of that, but also an update on Bolivia as well, and of course where you're at right now in Chile. Just walk us through these three sort of hot spots right now.
Yes, it's extremely difficult now to cover the continent because something is happening all the time. New uprisings, new actually brutality of security forces. It is in Colombia. It was expected and unexpected at the same time because Colombia is another neoliberal stronghold like Chile. It was never as successful, of course, as Chile for the big business because Colombia is known for its great disparities between the rich and poor. There is a civil war going on for many decades. Country is also known for drug cartels and for extremely brutal oppression of the popular uprisings and protests. So what we see now is actually the very powerful reaction from the part of the state. The borders are Colombian borders are closed. The only borders through which people can enter are the airports, because the river transportation between Colombia and its neighbors has been shut down. The land borders are closed. They're afraid of. They say the state says that they are afraid of the infiltration into the country. But like in Chile, we see an outrage of the people with the social situation. People are dying. So far, 3 protesters died, and also 3 police officers were killed by the attack on the police post in Cúcuta state, which is known for its narco mafias, which is relatively close to Ecuador. This is not going to end, obviously. I'm going to Bogota. I'm changing my plans. In about 1 week, I will be flying to Bogota and then to La Paz, Bolivia, because this is very serious situation. The misery in Colombia is incredible. I worked there on many occasions, and although the West again is very much supportive of the government for many reasons, the social situation is just terrible. Colombia has been used by the United States. They are supposed to have the first NATO bases, believe it or not, on the territory of South America. Also, Colombia is used to intimidate neighboring Venezuela. And therefore, it has very good reputation in Washington, London, and other Western capitals. On the other hand, if you really analyze the situation there, the social situation particularly, and not to speak about the human rights that favorite human rights of the West. There is no country in the region where the human rights are being violated in such incredible on such an incredible level as in Colombia.
And I might add, Andre, the U.S. have 9 military bases in the country of Colombia. It's not a very big country physically, but they have 9 military facilities there. And so if there was some sort of incident or, let's say, instability in a country like Colombia, or this spread to Venezuela, or you had some kind of problem between the two countries, which we saw almost happen earlier this year, but the U.S. can't intervene directly, but they have the facilities in Colombia for an international, quote, peacekeeping force or some kind of international deployment to help to, I guess, alleviate humanitarian concerns, etc. Use your imagination. What are the prospects of that happening right now?
Well, the prospects are always there. You mentioned the military bases, yes, and there is expansion also to NATO. Colombia is intimidating Venezuela with great force. I mean, they were allowing the Western implant Guaido, who self-declared himself an interim president, they allow him on its territory. Guaido was basically taking photo sessions with the paramilitaries, with the deadly paramilitaries. It's all arranged, prearranged. The Venezuelan opposition goes to the bridges that form the border between two countries. And of course, there is all sorts of infiltration from Colombia to Venezuela. But it's now it's actually a very interesting situation, because we will see how we experienced absolutely brutal and terrible coup against Evo Morales in Bolivia, and 30 people died so far. President is in Mexico, where he received political asylum. And the West was talking all the time, the mass media, about the human rights violations by Evo. There were actually no human rights violations to speak of before the coup, but it was set up this way. And the international Russian intel chief yesterday went public, saying that they have a clear information. Sputnik was carrying, Russian press agency Sputnik was covering the story, claiming that Russian intel chief actually has clear information that the coup in Bolivia was set up by the West. So imagine now in Colombia, this is so interesting, because the human rights are being violated, people are dying, but nobody is talking about it in the West. And if you go to the British Yahoo News, all the information about what is happening in Colombia is being postponed. I'm checking periodically mass media just so I can get two sides of the story, and they're carrying old news, like a day, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days old. So they don't want to really show that in the countries like Colombia or in Chile, where I am right now, the violation of human rights is on the level that is absolutely unimaginable in the socialist countries like Bolivia before Evo was overthrown. So it's very interesting to see where is this going to lead. Of course, I have very close contacts on the ground in Bogota, so I will be reporting for 21st Wire from there very soon. So we'll get first-hand information. But it is definitely not the mass media in the West that is really covering the story properly.
And I want to just back up what you said earlier about the coup in Bolivia. We have a report posted at 21stcenturywire.com. The headline is "Facts Now Reveal how the OAS, the Organization for American States, lied about the Bolivian, quote, election irregularities. And there we link to a report which has been released by the Center for Economic and Policy Research. This is just one of many reports out there which show that there were no election irregularities. Those claims by the OAS, by the U.S. government, by other states, by Brazil were false. There were
all set up. It was all set up. And, Patrick, what is very scary about being here in this continent, which was my home for many, many years, and I'm back here now. What is very scary is that there is absolute impotence when these things happen. What can we do? What are we going to do? Everybody knows that the coup was created by the U.S., that it was Organization of American States, which is controlled by Washington, actually lied. It provided false information. They overthrew democratically elected president, the greatest president probably on the territory, arguably after Chavez, in South America. But what are we going to do? And you see already things that I don't like to see at all. And even our allies like Lula yesterday spoke about, yes, it was a coup, it was terrible, but Evo should not have run for the fourth term, and it's very disturbing because this is besides the point. You see, the Constitution, they always say, well, Evo changed the Constitution, it was not really the good move, and so on. But what is Constitution? Constitution is a piece of paper which can be, which people can rewrite if they want to, if they like the leader that they have, if they really like the system which they have. Then Constitution is a secondary issue. It can be changed. It's not some kind of a religious document. It was changed. And now Evo is being accused of running for the fourth time. He won democratically elections, and people are holding against him, actually, that he was running for the fourth time, despite the fact that he got around 60% of the support in this. So this is democracy. It's a democracy according to Bolivian standards and culture and so on. Why should we stick to some kind of a democracy which is dictated from the West? But what we see now after what happened in Bolivia, as you said very correctly, and as your reports are showing, there was a coup. Everybody agrees there was a coup, but nobody can do anything, and nobody is willing to do anything, and that is the most actually horrifying thing.
Well, I think the people of Bolivia, certainly the supporters, this is a wake-up call for the MAS party, for the people in Bolivia, for the indigenous communities as well that elevated Morales into power, so many years ago. This is a major wake-up call, but this is now cascading across the continent, because what I find interesting about Colombia, Andre, is that there seems to be an expression of solidarity amongst the protesters for what's happening in Chile, for what's happened in Bolivia, and this kind of pushing back against U.S. dictating domestic policy in these countries. I've seen this in the Colombian protests. I mean, what have you seen? How strong is that vein in there?
Not in Chile, unfortunately. I'm meeting the leaders of the uprising. There is too much preoccupation with what is happening in Chile. In Colombia, more. You're correct. But what we have is a lack of solidarity, really, in Latin America. That has to definitely change, because people cannot. One country obviously cannot defeat the interventions from the north. You see, the issues that I know, I already noticed this in Ecuador when I was covering in Ecuador during the Korea presidency. And what I saw in Bolivia was the same thing. Correa and Evo made one great mistake, which was, of course, never made in Cuba or in Venezuela. They did not manage to inspire their military. Of course, the military in a country like Ecuador or Bolivia is corrupt. A lot of generals were trained in the United States. But these people, but the same situation was in Venezuela before Chavez came to power. So what Chavez did, and Cubans did, they inspired the military, because these are also human beings. They want money, they can get corrupt, but also if you really approach them and you say to them, look, this is much bigger than money. You are fighting for Patria Grande, you are fighting for South America, this, you can really inspire many of them. So after Chavez died or was killed or whatever, he left the military where it is now. And it stands besides Maduro. It supports Maduro no matter what, because they are on much bigger mission. In Ecuador, when I talked to the government officials of Korea, they were complaining even years ago. They said, look, it's a miracle that there is no coup against Korea yet, because the military is very much indecisive. They are with the West, they are with him, they are not sure where they stand. And in Bolivia, it was the same thing. Evo did incredible things for the continent. The empowerment of the indigenous people. I know the country 20, 30 years ago. It was a total basket case, racist. They treated indigenous people like animals. I couldn't even get my photographers to the decent cafe if they were not white. But what happened is Evo couldn't inspire the military, who many of them are actually indigenous folks too. He didn't inspire them in a way to say, look, I know that you have this history with the United States, but here we are building new South America. We are building South America for the indigenous people. We are rescuing our culture against the West, and people were raped, destroyed for centuries, and this could actually could be very important moment when the at least some generals would say, look, yes, we are going to divorce ourselves from the Western influence, and we are going to fight for our people, because they would feel that they are on some kind of a great mission. But Evo is a good, kind, decent human being. He was really fighting for better Bolivia. He didn't probably feel that it's necessary to deal too much with the military. But unfortunately, unless we have our back covered in South America by armed forces who are educated to understand what is actually happening during the process, during the revolution, then we are lost. And what happened in Bolivia is precisely that. Evo was betrayed by his own military. If the military would not go with the U.S. and the Organization of American States, we would not be in the situation in which we are right now.
Yes, so there's that side of things, and that just opens up another vantage point to the sort of the inner workings of power and government and political and social movements in South America, but also how they interface geopolitically. Andre Vltchek is our guest, and we want to thank you for this segment. Andre, there's a report which is we've just put on Twitter, but will be on Facebook soon. One of Andre's short reports from Santiago, Chile, and also talking about September 11th, 1973, which was a big date in Chile, a little historical context as well in that report. But check out his work and also his articles and books. There's links on the show page. Thank you very much, Andre Vltchek.
Patrick, thank you so much, and we will talk very soon, I'm sure, again.
Good luck with your travels and your reportage, Andre, and we'll definitely speak to you very soon. There he goes, ladies and gentlemen, Andre Vltchek. You can check out his work at 21st Century Wire and also at New Eastern Outlook and a number of other outlets on the web. and we'll be speaking to him again shortly. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to connect with our roving correspondent for culture and sport in Britain, Basil Valentine, on the other side. This is the Sunday Wire. I'm your host, Patrick Henningsen. We'll be right back.